Agenda item number 1 is the roll call. Commissioner Ambrose?
Present.
Commissioner Rennie?
Present.
Commissioner Lee has been delayed and will be joining us hopefully by 3 o'clock this afternoon. Agenda item number 2, public comment on matters appearing or not appearing on the agenda.
Gosh, sorry. Charlie Marsteller for the record. I was hoping we'd see Commissioner Kopp. He's not coming?
I haven't heard. Hopefully he'll be coming in shortly.
He just celebrated his 90th, so I thought we could acknowledge that. So that was my hope, and today is my birthday as well.
Oh, happy birthday.
Yeah, I'm not as old as he is, thankfully, but he's in pretty good shape, and I was just going to say some kind words. But please, go ahead.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. Agenda item number 3 on the consent calendar, the draft minutes for the Ethics Commission July 2018 regular meeting.
I had no corrections.
I'll move approval of the minutes.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. We need public comment. Any public comment? No public comment. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Minutes are approved by unanimous vote. Agenda item number 4, proposed stipulation, decision, and order in the matter of Quintin Mecke, Ethics Commission complaint number 27-151015.
Thank you, Commissioners. As you know, we're presenting this not on the consent calendar per Enforcement Regulation Section 12E because Commissioner Kopp requested it that it be heard separately. I'm not sure how you would like to proceed, Chair.
City Attorney Shen, do you have any advice for us here on this procedural matter?
Yeah, if you wish to do so, you could always pass on this item and return it to later in the meeting.
Why don't we do that? Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 5, discussion and possible action on proposed 2018 biennial conflict of interest code update for the Ethics Commission.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. This item is placed on your agenda every 2 years. As the memo describes, state law requires local agencies to review and update their conflict of interest code language to ensure that the positions identified on the code and the disclosure categories that apply to those positions are updated to reflect current structures, responsibilities, and work of that organization. Earlier this year, City Attorney's Office with the Board of Supervisors last, I guess, August, notified all departments of the requirement for this year's biennial conflict of interest code review. The Board of Supervisors is the code reviewing body for the City and County of San Francisco, and therefore they, in the end of the year, will adopt any changes by ordinance that apply to the city's code. Each department has a responsibility to report to the board and update the codes as necessary. And so this document and the process today is to request your consideration of the changes that we're proposing for the Ethics Commission on our list of designated filers and disclosure categories so that we can then report that on to the board and have that as part of the overall update for this year's biennial process. In brief summary, the memo that I've attached to the cover is a staff memo, a memo that I circulated to all staff back last month so that they would have ample time to review and comment if there were any questions. I have received no comment or questions from the staff. But as we did 2 years ago, we provided some reminder background about conflicts of interest codes and why they're important, what our current code has looked like over the last 2 years since we last updated it. We've identified changes that are proposed primarily to update titles, add positions that we did not have in 2016, and identify disclosure categories. And so we would, on attachment 3, which is item 5, page 8, is the resulting list of what we are proposing for you to consider and adopt today so that we can move this process on to the board.
So a question, Director Pelham, the titles that are listed here in this attachment, these are all, they currently reflect the organizational structure and titles as it exists today.
That's correct.
Including all of the vacant or the open positions that you'll be recruiting, that you're recruiting for.
That's correct. This includes the organizational chart as it appears for the staff for the coming fiscal year. I would note one thing, that there is a biennial code review mandate, so it's incumbent on us to make sure that we change and update codes, change them if necessary, based on that review, no less than every 2 years. But if there were some significant organizational change, departments can certainly review and update those codes at any time.
Okay, great, thank you. Commissioners, any comment or questions? Public comment? No comment, all right. Commissioner Ambrose?
Is there any action that's,
Yeah, there's, Director Pelmet asked that we approve
I
these.
would move that we approve the,
And I would second that motion.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, the motion to approve the Conflict of Interest Code for the Ethics Commission is unanimously approved. We are just... Agenda item number 6, discussion and possible action on proposed Ethics Commission opinion and advice regulations.
Thank you, Chair Chu. I am not Pat Ford. Pat Ford is celebrating his nuptials with some time off from the office. But he did leave us in good hands with the final draft of proposed advice and opinion regulations that we have been working on to try and bring forward some clarity and structure for those who are seeking advice from the Ethics Commission, so that they understand the process and also understand the implications for when they receive different types of opinions or advice from the Commission. This memo does include some additional feedback that we received based on some interested persons meetings, and has some attachments as well. But the attachment that's shown for the regulations for provision of opinions and advice is something that we would ask your consideration and approval of today. The regulation process, as you'll recall, if this commission adopts these will be forwarded over to the Board of Supervisors, where they have a 60-day period. Is that 60-day period for them to review? If they have any comment or want to change it, they would send them back. Yeah, after 60 days, if there is no action by the Board of Supervisors, then they would become law. Happy to answer any questions if I can.
I have a few questions and comments, and nothing very substantive. But in the 699-12 (A) close paren -1 requesting opinion, subparagraph B says, a request for an opinion is not a complete and proper request if it does any of the following. And then subparagraph is 4, asks a general question of interpretation or policy. Why is that limitation if the requester is concerned about the application of a specific regulation or interpretation?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think what we're trying to distinguish here is scenarios where an opinion is appropriate. Andrew Shen has a question about prospective actions. There's law that he is trying to understand how it applies to his specific circumstances, and he provides the commission with those specific circumstances. What we're getting at here is when somebody asks a general question of interpretation. Andrew Shen asks the Ethics Commission, what do you think this provision means? That's not what we understand an opinion to be. We understand an opinion to be something that is focused on specific facts by a requester whose duties are subject to those provisions of the law, and that guides them.
That's what I thought. It was that the requirement is it can be a general question, but the requester has to be impacted by the advice that you give. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. That's our intent with this.
All right.
And must also provide facts,
That's correct.
germane and pertinent to their situation.
That's correct.
Then going down to 699-12 (A) close paren 2 process. I'm just a little curious. You say in the last paragraph on the first page under A the determination shall be transmitted to the requester within 2 days after the determination is made. If the request does not constitute a complete and proper request, the executive director or staff shall notify the requester of the specific deficiencies in the request. Is there any time limit on when you have to do that?
Other than the 2 days after making the determination about its sufficiency?
Well, that's why I'm saying is it's in a separate section, as if there's a two-step.
Oh, no, if I'm understanding the notification, if there are specific deficiencies, is assumed within that prior sentence.
Okay. And then when you go to B, under that same regulation, as I read it, it says that following the determination that opinion request is complete and proper, the commission shall consider the draft opinion in open session at its next regularly scheduled meeting, so long as that meeting occurs no less than 45 days. Now, except where we don't, where we have a hiatus for summer, it's always 30 days between regularly scheduled meetings. So it's just sort of inconsistent to talk about a regularly scheduled meeting, the next regularly scheduled meeting, but it has to be 45 days later.
No, I understand your point. I think that's, I'm not sure I have an answer.
We're on item 6.
Just a minute. We're taking a look. If you give us just a moment.
I don't recall. Should just be next meeting that occurs at least 45 days after that.
So it's basically saying 45 days to do this. Yeah. I think we think, I apologize for the uncertainty here. I think we think that the idea was that if there is an opinion that's proper and we have a draft, the draft opinion to bring to the commission, the idea was that it would be, that there would be a window of 45 days to be able to bring that, to draft the opinion and bring it to you. So this language sounds like it's contradicting that. So,
Yes.
so we would need to change this to say, so long as, you just said you had it
I
stated.
think you should just strike
So long,
that.
Oh. Go ahead.
If I understand you, when I read this, I thought that it meant that we would have to schedule a special meeting within 45 days if we didn't have a regularly scheduled meeting. And what I heard you to say is no. Plus, if you read the next sentence, that you, as the executive director, would have discretion to give more time for the commission to consider an opinion. So the 45 days creates an implication that that the requester is entitled to a final determination within 45 days of the draft coming out, and I don't know that we want to create that impression. So I was going to say you could just strike so long as that meeting occurs no less than 45 days, and then it's either at the next regularly scheduled meeting, or if the executive director
Yeah.
says we need more time, then it'd be later.
I think that's more consistent with what we make
I mean,
sense. Yeah,
obviously,
just
any
fair
other
to Commissioner Reddick.
interpretations?
We held,
What was the thinking of why you wanted 45 days?
Well, I think it's as Commissioner Ambrose just said, we wanted to try and provide some certainty, but I think this is not, we did not intend to require the scheduling of special meetings.
No, I don't read it as, I don't necessarily read it as Commissioner Ambrose does. I read it as saying you can't bring it before the commission for at least 45 days. And I'm just wondering why that 45-day period is in there.
Well, I don't have a good answer for you. I don't have a good answer for you.
I see what you're saying, no less than.
Well, next regular.
Now I read your ambiguity, Commissioner Renee.
I don't.
It's no less than 45
You're
days,
trying to-
so
Yeah.
that just complicates it a little more.
I mean, the commission shall consider the draft opinion in open
Well-
session at its next regularly scheduled meeting, so long as that meeting occurs no less than 45 days after that determination.
I'm going to step away from the language for a minute, maybe
Yeah.
try and articulate some of the goals we had, and maybe you all can help clarify. I think it is the case that we recognize drafting opinions. Once we know something has been a proper request, the commission shall consider the draft opinion. We wouldn't want to be in a situation, I guess we wouldn't want to be in a situation where we have an opinion that we believe to be proper, and therefore in 2 weeks, when it is the next regularly scheduled commission meeting, that opinion has to be presented. Because this is, following the determination that an opinion request is complete and proper does not mean we have yet drafted the opinion. So I think this was trying to build in some time to assure that that could be drafted once it has been determined to be proper and complete, and then provide some time that doesn't rush it to the next meeting if that next meeting is too soon.
But I guess I would suggest you could use 30 days rather than 45 days, and then you would have the next regularly scheduled meeting, or 25 days if you wanted to have a little movement there.
Or
Just for the commission's reference, day is defined in the regulations as business days. So
As being what?
is day is defined in the regulations as business days or working days. So 30 business days, it really ends up being about a month and a half.
Well, that's more than a month.
So, through the chair, then I didn't understand. You're saying that this really isn't about the commission and when we schedule the hearing. It's about how much time the staff would require would want to commit in advance that you could have an opinion ready. So maybe you should just speak to that following your determination that it's complete and proper, the executive director will present a draft opinion for the commission's review in X number of days, instead of talking about considering the draft opinion in 45 days. I mean, you also have the problem that because of public notice, the draft opinion needs to be available for at least 72 hours and preferably a little more than that.
One other possible solution would be to drop out the word next, at a regularly scheduled meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And stay with your 45 days if that's you want, or 30 days, whatever you want. But just indicate that it's to be at a regularly scheduled meeting of the commission, not a specially called one for that purpose.
Okay.
I think that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think that makes sense. That seems to be a fairly straightforward clarification.
That's my only comments.
Any other comments from or questions from the commissioners? No? Public comment? So I would move then to,
I'm sorry, through the
Commissioner
chair, I did have one question going back to the question that Commissioner Rennie first addressed. I just want to make sure that the record is clear. We're talking about, in this section, that we were about requests to the commission, but going to the informal advice, you similarly, I'm trying to find the section. You similarly say that they can't ask a question of, a general question of interpretation or policy. So if someone just calls and says, my concern is that because this is informal advice, that the very specific checklist that's required, you may just have somebody call and say, it says 45 days or those business days or work days, or, I'm just worried that for something that is informal, you're making it fairly formal. Is this a problem that people call up and give you a lot of hypotheticals or ask a lot of general questions and take up staff time?
I think it can be, and I think what we're trying to clarify is informal advice is not sort of telephone guidance. Informal advice, as it's used here, is actually written. It doesn't provide immunity. It's not something the commission, as a body, considers and adopts.
So it's sort of quasi-formal.
Kind of quasi-formal. Some may call it written advice. So to your question about somebody calling and asking for guidance, this is not applying to that. We want to have and will have, excuse me?
It's not actually written, but you're saying it's somewhat formal.
Excuse me, can you just give me a minute?
Just for the commission's benefit, I think it's fairly clear from the regulations that requests for formal advice need to be written. If you look at 699-12A-1, subsection A, there it specifies that requests for formal opinions need to be in writing. Right, but for informal advice, there's no requirement that the request for formal and informal advice must be in writing as well. So I don't read that as just being restricted to email advice.
I think we answered how we were.
I would imagine that there would be multiple scenarios of people coming to the commission and seeking both written advice by email, clarifying questions about a filing, or what documentation would need to be submitted for a public financing qualification request, and also questions that would come up over the phone. Say, when do I need to file my 460? Right. That would, I think, those two scenarios would be encompassed by the informal advice section.
So if I may, just to describe in brief some of the protocol in the office, having seen it firsthand, what Pat is setting forth here in these regulations concerns, I believe, two categories that the charter itself creates: opinions and advice. These two things that the charter creates, and which we now need to clarify by regulation because the charter leaves ambiguous, do not concern what staff consider to be a third category, which we call guidance, in which Director Pelham referred to as guidance. Guidance would be handled typically by the compliance staff within the Ethics Commission. And a request for guidance would be exactly as Chair Chu was describing. Someone calls up and has a kind of immediate question about a filing they have to make, a deadline, how to fill it in. Compliance staff provide that informal guidance over the phone or by email on an ad hoc basis. And that guidance we will continue to provide on that ad hoc basis, independent of the informal advice or the written advice process that these regulations here describe. I believe, and Director Pelham can clarify, requests for opinions or advice typically go not to the compliance staff, but to the policy staff. And policy staff would, whether a requester for informal advice puts their question to us in writing, policy staff, in providing an answer for informal advice, would intend to respond in writing.
So if I may, if that's the staff's intent, I suggest that it would be helpful to specify that requests for informal advice should be in writing, and responses to those requests for informal advice should be in writing, and that there's a third category of guidance that is not covered by any of these rules. I don't see that really spelled out anywhere, and I could imagine a member of the public being a little bit confused about how they should approach the commission for guidance or advice, as it were.
Yeah, yes, I would agree.
We certainly can bring these back next month with that clarification. Yeah, I think it would be helpful for people to understand that distinction.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any public comment?
Commissioner Kopp.
You may have answered the question by prior testimony or comment. Does email constitute in writing?
In practice, that is the case for us.
Okay.
Yes.
Secondly, on page 5, the last regulation subsection, effective informal advice, a grammatical change should be made. You use the word person, which is the subject, singular, and then you use the word conforms their conduct. I would move to change there to conforms his or her conduct.
Any other comments? Okay. Public comment after that discussion? Okay, so Director Pelham, you'll bring this back next month.
Yeah, apologies for the confusion, but we will look forward to clarifying things for you next month.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Thank you. Okay, since Commissioner Kopp has rejoined us, shall we go back to item number 4, the proposed stipulation, decision, and order on the matter of Quintin Mecke, Ethics Commission complaint number 27-151015.
Thank you, Chair Chu and Commissioners. As I stated previously, we're presenting this not on the consent calendar per Enforcement Regulation Section 12E due to the request by Commissioner Kopp that it be heard separately. Enforcement regulations at Section 12A empower the Executive Director to enter into negotiations with a respondent to resolve the factual and legal allegations in a complaint at any time. In this agenda item number 4 before you today, the Executive Director did in fact resolve these factual and legal allegations in a matter with Quintin Mecke arising from unreported campaign consultant activity that he was employed during a period of time in 2014 for a ballot measure committee and another period of time in 2015 by a different ballot measure committee. That stipulation is attached to the agenda item for your consideration today. The stipulated order before you settles this matter in its entirety. Ethics Commission staff and the respondent have agreed on both the language and the penalty amount, and we'll hope that you will agree today that this is a fair penalty amount. Really, we're here to discuss the 4 corners of this proposed settlement and only the 4 corners of this settlement. The options before you here today are that the Commission can accept or reject the settlement, but again, we hope that you'll agree with staff and the respondent that this is a fair and appropriate settlement. Staff feels the penalty amount proposed in this settlement before you today is severe and enough to promote a deterrent effect since it exceeds the maximum that would be assessed by the FPPC in analogous cases of this kind, as well as being consistent with previous settlements that this commission has settled in the past. This penalty amount is especially severe given that the respondent has demonstrated a financial inability to pay pursuant to our Enforcement Regulation Section 9D7. And Chair Chu, I can speak to the penalty determination.
Yes, that would be very helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Pursuant to our Enforcement Regulation Section 9D7, the respondent demonstrated a partial inability to pay, which includes submitting 3 years' worth of income tax statements, as well as at least 6 months' worth of bank statements. Staff then assessed these financial documents and used that to inform our penalty determination. And those financial documents are also confidential, so I'm unable to speak to their exact particulars here today, but they did inform our penalty assessment. Furthermore, investigators look to past settlements by the Ethics Commission, as well as other jurisdictions for guidance on its penalty amount determination. However, this is the first settlement for campaign consultant violations that the Commission has heard since 2010. And since this is a local law, there weren't directly applicable cases in other jurisdictions. So investigators looked at the most recent settlements with analogous cases. And in this instance, these are analogous cases which are failure to register as a lobbyist and failure to report contacts as a lobbyist. And looking toward that 2010 settlement that the Ethics Commission settled, It was for a total penalty amount of $4,000 for 13 counts stemming from a respondent's campaign consultant activity that took place over the course of 2 years. In an analogous case in 2015, the Ethics Commission settled for $1,500 for one count of an unreported lobbyist contact. And in another settlement that year, the Ethics Commission settled for $500 for one count of unreported lobbyist activity. In an additional analogous case from 2012, the Ethics Commission settled for $6,000 for 6 counts of unreported lobbyist contacts in which the lobbyist made 6 unreported contacts and was paid a total of $22,250 for their lobbying activity. And I'm available to answer any and all questions that the commissioners may have.
Yeah,
Commissioner Cobb?
I have a procedural question. You attach an exhibit in the form of a personal service contract, which has 2 names, the respondent and somebody named Ted Gullickson, SF Affairs, and then a second one with Dale Carlson. Is there a reason that you don't attach a signed copy of these contracts, assuming they were signed by the parties to them?
When the investigators requested these documents from the respondent, these were the only records that the respondent had with particular reference to these contracts.
Available from the respondent?
Yes, that's correct.
These are nowhere, well, in the investigation, wasn't the signed or executed copy of each requested?
From the respondent, and as well as the documentation of these individual committees themselves that they reported on their campaign Form 460 reports.
What's that mean?
Means that these committees that the respondent worked for did also report his salary as campaign expenditures.
I understand, but I'm looking for a signed copy. What I've been provided is a unsigned copy of each contract.
Those
Is
copies
it
were-
impossible to obtain a signed contract?
If I may, I believe Eric inherited this case because it's a much older case stemming from conduct in 2014, and so the case file was more or less built at the time that Eric inherited it. So a prior investigator either was unable to obtain a signed contract or concluded that an unsigned contract would serve the needs of the commission.
Well, it doesn't serve my need. I want to see an executed contract. That's number one. Number two, if you refer to a case some years ago, 8 years ago or so, and with the same, almost the same fine as here, I will make it short. I would not settle for less than $12,500. These 2 counts from conduct by a person who is experienced in San Francisco campaigns, whether they're ballot measures or individuals.
I think I'm sitting in your seat.
And I don't know what the financial statements show, because those aren't part of the file for us, but I certainly would find them relevant to my decision. Thank you.
So, Eric, if I may, based on your review of the respondent's financial statements and tax returns is $12,500 an amount that he would be able to pay?
I would wager that the respondent would have to take out a loan in order to pay that amount.
May I interject,
Commissioner
Madam
Kopp?
Chairwoman? Or pay it on an installment basis, as is the case with about 5 or 6 of these uncollected penalties.
Well, I believe that staff are reluctant to provide for installment plans going forward. Essentially, that converts staff into the lending agent, or rather, it converts the commission into the lending agent if a respondent has to take out a loan to pay a penalty. And we think going forward, it's inappropriate for the city to be in the business of making loans.
Well, why are these other malfeasors paying on an installment basis?
Well, we can talk about the enforcement report later, but there's currently nobody on an installment plan.
I believe it was a holdover from practices under the prior executive director, and that from and after Director Pelham's tenure began, the commission is no longer entering into installment plans, simply because the effectiveness, I think, is pretty sketchy or debatable.
If I may, under the enforcement regulations that would govern this kind of proceeding, there's a specific provision about installment plans that states, as a rule, the executive director will not accept offers to pay, et cetera, in installments. There is a little bit of flexibility for the executive director to consider such installment plans, but I believe it's the commission's stated policy, as you said, Chair Chu, not to entertain them.
And through the
Commissioner Ambrose, yes.
Chair, for my benefit, because I'm not as familiar with the regulations, consideration of the individual's ability to pay, that is something that the regulations ask us to take into consideration? And that was your evaluation of the individual's tax returns and income. It was the basis for a penalty of $4,500. Is that the proposed penalty, correct?
Yeah, the regulations, I believe in section 12, with respect to a hearing on the merits, set out the penalty factors. And the penalty factors acknowledge that we could contemplate a respondent's inability to pay when the executive director exercises her discretion to settle a matter. Instead of bringing it all the way through litigation, those same penalty factors can be applied in the settlement context as well. And so that's why we've done them pursuant to the regulations, and that's why the executive director or staff through her have conducted that analysis. I suppose if you wish to conduct a hearing on the merits and you independently were to make a penalty determination, in theory, you could, in closed session, review the financial documents yourself. But whereas here the executive director has done that as your delegate, as the person who holds the power to settle on behalf of the commission, she has undertaken that work on your behalf.
Yeah, and I don't have a question, but I do have one follow-up question. Concerning the form contracts that are in the packet, the attachment, I think I heard you say that the committees that are on the other end of this contract, that they did file, they're not before us, it's just the consultant who's at issue. And so from their filings, you were able to learn the extent of their payment to this individual. Is that the basis for the $25,000 in consulting fees?
Yes, that's correct, Commissioner
Okay.
Ambrose. And it also
So they're-
corroborated the contracts. And it also meant that this activity that the respondent undertook wasn't completely hidden from the public. The public did have a way of accessing this knowledge through these individual committees' reports.
Because the committee's filings showed that they hired that particular consultant for those amounts? I see.
For those activities, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Move that approve the settlement.
Public comment?
We'll take public comment.
Oh, you already had?
No, we haven't taken public comment, but, so there's Commissioner Rennie has moved to approve the settlement as presented by staff. Okay. We'll take, is there a second to that?
I'll second the motion, but I would like public
Yeah,
comment.
then we'll call for public comment.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Charlie Marsteller for the record. It's good to see this issue arise in discussion, because I think it's an issue that does need to be discussed. What is reasonable assessment of fines and penalties and ultimately maybe stipulations? But I was going to say this number is a little low relative to 2010, when you last voiced an opinion, although the facts are same. And I'm pleased that Mr. Mecke has come forth with good faith and presented apparently the documents to make his case. Obviously, there's a strong incentive for him to do so on the question of his ability to pay. I think there was confusion on the question of installments, because BDR does negotiate out installments. If this were to go to BDR, that's probably what they would do. So I think that should give you some pause and perspective on what ultimately the ability to pay is on this matter. And I think, I don't know if that really has been determined clearly, at least to the public. There's a statement that you had received 3 years tax and 6 months bank, and that may be current data. I don't know if that's old or current data. What time frame does that reflect? The record was built in 2014, so the question is whether or not there's been a change in the financial status of this individual. That would be another question in the public's mind. But I do want to thank you for this robust discussion. I think it does raise some questions, and I think you can probably get to the answer today, hopefully.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. If I may just step in quickly, the financial records were current. They were the most recent 3 years of tax returns and the most recent 6 months of bank statements up to the time of the request.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Quintin Mecke. I'm the respondent in the case before you. I'm a little, quite frankly, speechless at the idea of a $12,000 fine. I have acted in good faith. I have provided more financial documents to this commission and to staff than no one else has access to. I work for a nonprofit in San Francisco. I struggle to make a living here. For me to pay $12,000 in cash for 2 mistakes I made from not filing 4 years ago, I've acknowledged those mistakes. I would like to move on. I feel like $4,500 is enough of a stretch for my finances. If you approve a $12,000 fine, speechless, I will leave here. And I will ask you, to what end does that serve? I really want to sit with that for a second. Like, to what point are we making if you approve a $12,000 fine versus $4,500, which I will struggle to pay? So I will leave you with that. I have provided all of the documents necessary to this commission. I would like this to be over. I would ask for your approval. The idea of $12,000 just shook me that I would be paying that. So taking out a loan to pay the Ethics Commission, kidding me? It's hard enough to live here. So I would ask that you approve the settlement as agreed to with staff, provided all the documents that they have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay.
May I be recognized?
Commissioner Kopp?
I will not vote for the pending motion. I note this part of the staff report on page 2. Respondent has a history of engaging in political activity in San Francisco dating back to at least 2012, when, for example, he formed a candidate-controlled committee for his candidacy for the San Francisco Board of Supervisors and filed statements with the San Francisco Ethics Commission. In 2013 and 2014, respondent worked as a contact lobbyist in San Francisco and filed lobbyist reports with the commission. In 2014, he then contracted to provide campaign management services for some committee in support of some proposition. The staff report notes that he was required to register as a campaign consultant. He did not do so in 2014 with respect to that and with respect to quarterly reports. That was repeated the next year with some other campaign on a ballot measure called Campaign or Share Better SF. Again, the same repetition. The staff report on page 4 acknowledges, and I quote, applying the penalty factors enumerated above, staff believes the respondent's violations are significant. What I've said I would support is a $12,500 fine, bearing in mind that the violations could amount to a penalty of $75,000 under the charter of the City and County of San Francisco. The point is the rule of law and obedience to the rule of law by somebody who this record shows is experienced in the ways and the means of political activity in San Francisco, whether for a nonprofit or otherwise. And that's the basis of my suggestion of a $12,500 penalty. And if installments are needed, those can be obtained in the form of the executive director's exercise of her discretion under the guiding ordinances and charter amendment. Bearing in mind, as Mr. Marsteller pointed out 8 years ago, the same fine was applied. I think there's been a bit of a increase in the consumer price index since then. Thank you.
Okay. So the motion on the floor is to approve the settlement as presented by staff in this matter, and there was a second from Commissioner Ambrose. And all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those against?
No.
The motion carries 4-1. Agenda item number 7, a discussion of the monthly staff policy report.
Thank you, Chair Chu. I am still not Pat Ford, and this is the policy report that he was able to provide with an update of where items stand in the policy unit, including ongoing work on the public financing review to bring forward some additional recommendations and analysis to you at your October meeting. Also, a general discussion on some of the some campaign finance workshops that Pat Ford and Tyler Field from the IT staff have been doing out in the community with members of the media to help inform them about the tools we have on staff on the website to enable them to do research about campaign finance and money in politics locally, particularly as the November election heats up. Those have been very well received. They also provided a public workshop, I believe it was last week, a couple weeks ago, to provide some information to others who might be interested in learning those tools and becoming more familiar with them. We are also reaching out on the whistleblower ordinance. Supervisor President Cohen's office did reintroduce the whistleblower ordinance. Apparently, the initial the initial ordinance that was brought forward was the old ordinance prior to the version that President Breed had introduced. That error has been corrected, so it is now the current ordinance that is pending, and we've reached out to her office to request meeting to walk through timeframes and how we as a commission can support moving forward that ordinance to final enactment. So I will keep you posted as soon as we hear about that. And Pat has also attached to this report a couple of slides from those presentations that he and Tyler did, and also some information about other legislation that's been on a watch list. So the information's presented for your informational purposes, no actions required. And again, if there are any questions I can answer, I will attempt to, but I wanted to just highlight that for you on Pat's behalf.
Director Pelham, on the sessions that were held for the media, does Pat and Tyler, do they plan to hold additional briefings or sessions between now and Election Day?
I think we are open to that. We don't have any scheduled right now, but there has been a lot of support. And so I think it's been one of those word of mouth things as individuals hear about it. They've suggested maybe we should talk to others. So we are more than happy to do that wherever possible, because we do know that there was really positive feedback to getting more familiar with what this information can do during an election cycle to help equip voters as well as those who write stories about money in politics.
I think it's a terrific thing to do, and hats off to Pat for taking the initiative and making our work more accessible and understandable to both the media and the public. So keep up the good work. Commissioner Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to add that when you do the outreach, please include the new media, the ethnic media, the community media, because they represent a really sizable population. So please reach out to them.
Thank you for that reminder.
Public comment? Agenda item 7? Commissioner Coe?
Go ahead, Lynn.
Okay. Oh, Charlie, go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to really laud the new dashboard. I was going to say desktop. Dashboard system. And I wanted to say there's been a development that you want to be aware of, and that is that we have a new assistant IT person who has incredible skills, apparently, in enhancing that dashboard system. I've seen him twice now in action, and I was very impressed. I've certainly been impressed with Mr. Massey. He's brought us into the modern era, into the 21st century, surely. He and his brother both have done great service to the commission many years back. But the new guy, the new hire, has been exceptional in his contributions as well. I would also second Commissioner Lee's comment regarding, I guess I hate to use this term, minority media, but basically a broad spectrum approach to the media in the city. Because I myself have been asked to appear and be subsequently translated into various languages by various media to explain what ethics is, or what campaign finance is, or what the initiative process is all about, because the newcomers to the city and even the old people here, long time, really want to know what's going on. That has not changed just because they've come to America. So definitely want to outreach to them. And there is a list of the community press that Friends of Ethics has provided to the commission that should be of help with, and it's pretty current. So you'll be able to do your outreach from that. And I look forward to Pat coming back, and hopefully in after a good vacation and a good honeymoon, and he can get to work on public financing, because we want to really, I'm sure. But he was intellectually challenged or interested.
No pressure, no
Yeah,
pressure.
no
Right.
question. Okay.
Thank you, Charlie. Any other public comment? Okay, moving on to agenda item number 8, discussion of monthly staff enforcement report, including an update on various programmatic and operational
Wait,
highlights. Oh,
Have we left this?
no, it's 07. Did you have something on item number 7?
Yeah,
Okay. Commissioner Kopp?
all right. This, I just have a question. Who's handling this, Ms. Pelham? You are?
The policy work, yes, that would be me
Okay.
for today.
Have you talked to the Department of Elections about putting up a sign as to where to go to apply for public financing?
No, we have not, I have not yet, but I will follow up before the next meeting, and I will report to you all progress on that front, because I know that's important for the November election.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Agenda item number 8, discussion of monthly staff enforcement report, including an update on various programmatic and operational highlights of the enforcement program's activities since the last monthly meeting.
Thank you, Chair Chu and Commissioner. So we haven't seen you in a couple of months. I'm pleased to report that the investigators have been, as always, extremely diligent. But of course, so have the public. And so we have a mix of progress on complaints that we had received previously and a number of new complaints. We got 22 new complaints in the 2 months since we last reported to you. That leaves 87 complaints currently in preliminary review, the triage process that investigators undertake to determine whether to open an investigation, dismiss the allegations outright, or refer the matter to another jurisdiction. We have currently 85 matters under open investigation, so nearly as many being actively investigated as we have waiting to be triaged. The numbers have ticked up a little bit in the last 2 months. I would attribute that to the most recent election cycle. We tend to get many more complaints during an election season than we do outside of an election season. But in brief, we're looking at a process of roughly 3.5 months to undertake that triage that I described a minute ago. And it takes just over 13 months on average to bring an investigation to closure, whether by settlement or otherwise. I also wanted to take this opportunity to let you know and to let the public know, if they didn't already, that the Enforcement Division is also called more thoroughly the Enforcement and Legal Affairs Division. And this division holds primary responsibility for fulfilling the Commission's transparency obligations under the San Francisco Sunshine Ordinance and related legislation. In the last 6 months, the Commission has received and fulfilled 32 public records requests, 10 of those since we saw you last, so about 30% of them in the last 2 months. That means on average we get more than a request every week. Occasionally, in responding to that request, the answer is that we have no records that would respond to the questions that a requester has put to us. But in other instances, we have an overwhelming number of records that would respond to the questions of a requester. So the scope of response varies from 0 records to upwards of 10,000. And you'll see notes that it takes on average about 12 staff hours every week to fulfill those requests. Staff have produced to the public in the last 6 months roughly 20,000 pages of records related to the business of the Ethics Commission, and staff are currently collecting and reviewing an additional 10,000 for production in the coming weeks. I would add, lastly, that the person who currently serves as the Commission's Public Information Officer is Thomas McLean. He is a senior investigator and legal analyst. He came to us from the San Diego District Attorney's Office. Director Pelham introduced him to you about 6 months ago, and he's done an excellent job for the Commission, learning a new area of law, understanding the requests that we receive, applying the law to those requests, and coordinating with staff how to generate and produce the records that the public are entitled to. And he shoulders the bulk of staff time in responding to these requests. So when I say that we spend roughly 12 hours a week on these, I mostly mean Thomas. And in addition to his responsibilities on the records side, he of course has investigations for which he's responsible as an investigator.
So, Jeff, is there any way that we can get him more help to another shoulder at the wheel to help with the heavy lift on identifying documents, reviewing documents, and then producing those documents? Because 12 hours per week is a significant amount of time, and it probably wasn't, whatever he's doing on records requests is not, it takes away from the time that he can spend on investigations.
Yes, thank you, Chair Chu. Historically, the job of Public Information Officer fell to the Deputy Director. Mm-hmm. So previously, Jessica Bloom shouldered the bulk of this responsibility. Under staffing transitions, we divided up some of those responsibilities. As you know, Gayatri Taikondial is now the Deputy Director. The responsibility of the Public Information Officer could be fulfilled by the Director of Enforcement and Legal Affairs. That would be me. So I have a smaller shoulder than Thomas, but I'm willing to offer it. And so we have talked about going forward some work that I might do to free him up to conduct investigations. Long term, if the volume of requests persists as it has been over the course of the last 6 months, I think that the Commission will have to seriously consider requesting some additional staff resources because although we take very seriously our transparency obligations, we also take very seriously our enforcement obligations, and we want to see that all of those are fulfilled to the fullness of their mandate.
Agreed. So, I mean, one idea, and obviously would leave this up to you to determine, but if there are any salary savings from the open positions that have yet to be filled, to hire a temp who could help, if that would be, something worth exploring. I just understand that there's and applaud, the effort to meet both the requests of the public for transparency, but also don't want to meet those obligations at the expense of making progress against the caseload that only continues to grow.
Thank you.
Sorry, I interrupted you as you were going.
Oh, no,
through the rest.
that was the end.
Okay.
I'm happy to entertain other questions.
Questions from commissioners? Okay. Public comment? Okay. Agenda item number 9, discussion of the Executive Director's Report, an update of various programmatic and operational highlights of Ethics Commission staff activities since the Commission's last monthly meeting.
Thank you, Chair Chu. There has been a lot going on over the last couple of months since the Commission last met. We've been able to take advantage of that time at the staff level to make some progress, significant progress on some hiring and some staffing. I would first note, as my report does, announcing for you formally that Jeff Pierce, who has been acting as our Enforcement Director and Legal Affairs Director since March, was appointed permanently to that position since we last met. So we're really lucky to have Jeff's experience as an investigator, boots on the ground, but also just a lot of really great experience and insight from his prior work experience and his background and training, which is, as you see from my report, extensive and fascinating. So Jeff's really we're just glad that he's on board to take on this additional role, and I think have a lot of exciting things ahead in the coming year with that. With his permanent appointment, we will be backfilling the senior investigative position that Jeff had previously served. I'll get to that in just a moment. But I also am happy to announce that we were able to fill the 4th position in Stephen Massey's electronic data and disclosure electronic disclosure and data analysis, our IT team, that we have now filled that 4th position. As you saw from the previous report, and Stephen and his team continue to do really terrific work in helping the public access information so that it's not in dusty file cabinets. They've also really helped us as an office move into the 21st century pretty quickly with how we do our work. So having 4 of them working together, I think we're going to, again, continue to see major progress. Maron Calderon, he's called Arnaldo. Arnaldo joined our staff this past month, and he has come from elsewhere in the city. He was with a Department of Public Health doing information systems work as a business analyst there, and has terrific experience. It's relevant to the kinds of tools and efforts that we're making. So we're just delighted that he was interested in coming over to us, and he's now rounding out that team. So we look forward to bringing him to the meeting and having you a chance to introduce himself to you all as well. Today at 5 o'clock is the deadline for 5 terrific positions. We were able to make progress to get those 5 remaining positions that have been a part of our hiring plan posted out in the world. We've tried to extensively notify colleagues, other organizations, other networks to get applicants, so that we have, again, as we've been seeing, a terrific pool of people interested in working with us. We did extend the deadline by 1 week because we thought it was important, with the commission meeting materials being out in public and the sort of dog days of summer, we wanted to make sure it was on folks' radar. So that deadline is today, but we will be working with our support over at DHR, the Department of Human Resources, to try and fill those positions as soon as possible. They are all civil service positions, and as you know, that process can take some time. It's likely that we will see people in chairs at the end of the year, calendar year, if we're lucky. We're going to continue to be as aggressive as we can, but sometimes it's dependent on getting rooms where the tests are administered, and they've already been filled. So anyway, we're going to keep working on that, but that was progress. I would also note that 2 other things over the last month. As you know, we've been in a mode of office renovation. The Controller's Office has been extraordinarily gracious with our team, housing us over at 314 City Hall and in their annex with some of their other staff, and Real Estate Department as well, and allowing us to use some space in 25 Van Ness. We've been working to finalize deadlines and timeframes. This week's progress is that there is now carpet that has been laid in the office, which will now enable the workstations to be installed by next week. All of this is to say that we are targeting October 4th as the date that we will be back in our offices at 25 Van Ness, and we will hopefully make that a very seamless transition between now and then. We know that it's been a bit daunting sometimes for the public to find where we are, but we think we've been able to provide services uninterrupted, and we're very much working to do that over the next couple of weeks, so that it won't impact any services or communications that we have. If anybody does have concerns about that, I hope that you will please share them with me and let me know so we can be on top of it. And the same goes for members of the public who might be experiencing some of that. But we are looking forward to being back in our space and having everybody back regularly, seeing each other. We've kind of missed each other. The last thing I would say is that the other thing that we've been able to do over this last month, as you might recall, every year we establish individual goals about how our work supports the overarching organizational goals that we have as a commission. We know we have our blueprint for our budget process that describes the kinds of goals that we've continued to work on over these past 3 years. Every year we want to take some time to sit back and step back with staff and make sure that our individual goals are aligning with those organizational efforts that are underway. It's part of an annual performance review process where we establish those goals and have conversations with each other. We completed that process so that all supervisors have met with all staff in the office at the end, as of the end of the summer, and that's it's a good chance for everybody to have a once-a-year conversation about how we're doing and where we're going. So that was very helpful, I think, to take time to do that and to do it well, and we'll keep focusing on that going forward. I think with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have for me, but I would just say from all of us on the staff, we do appreciate the flexibility and support that everybody's shown during this period of transition with the office move. We're looking forward to being back and also to reporting more good news as we go forward this fall on hiring and more progress on the work that we're doing.
Wonderful. Well, first off, I'd like to congratulate you, Jeff, on your appointment to the Director of Enforcement. I think that you are off to a great start, and we look forward to continuing to work with you and to see more great things coming out of your department with your team. And also, Leanne, kudos for getting through the annual review and performance review conversation process. It's a really important thing to do, and I know that it was an ambitious goal that you set, but to have gone through, set the goal and met it, I think is a testament to, both your leadership and also the commitment of your leadership team to make sure that they do right by all the staff who are working. So keep up the great work. Any other? Commissioner Lee?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's great to hear that you may be moving back home October 4th, before the election. I wonder if there's been a practice that you have open house to welcome the public, because this would be a great opportunity as part of your public engagement and outreach initiative to really not bring in the folks who's followed you for many years, but the new communities, the folks who may not know the commission that well. This may be a good opportunity for them. And also, we have so many new staffers. It would be good for folks to meet with you. I know that we won't be able to serve coffee and cookies, but at least have people see the beautiful new office.
Thank you for that. I do make a mean chocolate chip cookie, I will say.
Oh.
We do have coffee in the office, but I think that's a very helpful suggestion. I think we're excited about sharing the newness of being back, and sharing it with people outside of our four walls would be a terrific idea. So there may well be a phone call in your future as well to join us, as well as to the other members of the commission. But thank you. I think that's something that would be great to do.
Terrific idea.
I'll bring dessert.
Well, definitely then.
Any other commissioner comment, questions? Okay, public comment? Charlie.
Well, speaking of hospitality, it is an august occasion we've just passed recently, and that was Commissioner Kopp's 90th birthday. And I
Happy
wanted to
birthday.
extend my compliments to him on his amazing anniversary. And also, I'm sure the commission would agree that if you can throw in a birthday cake in the office opening on October 4th,
Too many calories.
well, make it a calorically sensible birthday cake.
We'll have a small slice.
But my thought is that I don't think we can give you a cake, the public, but you can give us a cake. And you're not bribing us. You're the decision makers. So that's the thought. I was wondering who could bring the cake. And I think if the staff provides the cake, that would work.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Happy birthday,
Thank
Commissioner
you.
Kopp.
Thank you, Mr. Marsteller.
Okay. Any other public comment? Okay, item number 10, discussion and possible action regarding status of complaints received or initiated by the Ethics Commission. Possible closed session.
Madam Chairwoman, I request a closed session on the confidential report from the executive director.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, public comment on this item? No, no public comment, okay. Yes, we'll take a 5-minute break, and then when we come back, we'll go into closed session at, let's call it 3:30.
SF Gov TV, San Francisco Government Television. SF Gov TV, San Francisco Government Television. SF Gov TV, San Francisco Government Television.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is London Breed. I am the mayor of the city and county of San Francisco, and I am here to welcome mayors from all over the country, including the U.S. Conference of Mayors and the Center for Climate and Energy Solutions, to this great city. We are all gathered here today for a common cause of taking meaningful action to combat climate change. As we all know, this is an issue that is bigger than one of our cities, one of our regions, and this country. Climate change is the defining issue of our time. And the choices we make today, the commitments we can agree on, and our sustained cooperation will determine whether or not we rise to the challenge. I'm proud San Francisco is one of more than 150 cities that took part in the survey conducted by the Alliance for a Sustainable Future. Fighting climate change takes all of our cities working together to share information, practices, and ideas so we can come up with effective solutions that will protect our environment for generations to come. In San Francisco, we are truly proud of the work we've been doing for years to implement sustainable policies that work while growing our economy. Since 1990, we have reduced our greenhouse gas emissions by 30% and cut our landfill disposal in half, all while growing our economy by 111%. To do this, we champion zero-waste policies, advanced clean energy initiatives, reduced emissions from public transportation, and are home to some of the most sustainable buildings in the world. But we're not stopping there. We are adopting policies to meet our goal of being carbon neutral by 2050. And by the year 2030, we have committed to cutting our landfill waste in half, decarbonizing all of our new buildings, and achieving 100% renewable energy. As mayors, we are all leading the effort in our cities to be more sustainable. We can achieve this by working across our borders as one global community to push for strong environmental protections. Together, we have the ability to create a cleaner and greener sustainable future for generations to come. And as we move forward this week, San Francisco, as you know, will be hosting the Global Climate Action Summit. I am so excited that Governor Jerry Brown has chosen the city and county of San Francisco, we have been a leader in the effort to combat climate change. And as we bring people from not only all over the United States, but all over the world to San Francisco, we will continue to push the envelope and demand action. The whole point of this climate summit is action. It's about coming up with solutions. San Francisco, as much as we live in a bubble, we can't do it alone. We need everyone here, and the leaders of many of these great cities who are joining us today will help us lead the way. And with that, I'd like to introduce the president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors from Columbia, South Carolina, President Benjamin, Mayor Benjamin, whichever title you like. He's been a great leader in an environmental effort and a wonderful leader with the U.S. Conference of Mayors. Mayor Benjamin.
Thank you so much, Mayor Breed, for having us here today. We're honored to be with you and appreciate your generous hospitality. We're looking forward to working with you in the days ahead. My name is Steve Benjamin. I'm the mayor of Columbia, South Carolina, and I have the privilege of serving as president of the United States Conference of Mayors. If you grant me a brief point of personal privilege, I want to go ahead and go down the line and have our colleagues here, both our mayors and our guests and partners, introduce themselves so you know who's here. And talk really loud. You don't have the microphone. Please. Mayor.
Mayor Tom Gunn, Richmond, California.
I'll come back to you.
Mayor Rob Rennie from town of Los Gatos, California.
Mayor Thomas Small of Culver City, California.
Mayor Sam Hindi, Foster City, California.
Bob Giuseppe, President of the Center for Climate and Energy Solutions. Mayor Arlene Burns, Bossier, Oregon.
Vice Mayor Ray Mueller, Menlo Park. Mayor Paul Soglin, Madison, Wisconsin.
Chief Executive Officer Cindy Crane, Rocky Mountain Power.
Libby Schaff, Mayor of Oakland, California.
Salt Lake City Mayor Jackie Biskupski.
Colleen Penner, Mayor of San Leandro, California.
John Mitchell, Mayor of New Bedford, Massachusetts. Craig County, Mayor of Des Moines, Iowa.
Christopher Cabaldo, Mayor of West Sacramento.
Carol Dutra Bernacci, Mayor of Union City, California.
Jerry Moyo, Mayor of West Palm Beach, Florida.
Mike Cahill, Mayor of Beverly, Massachusetts.
Ted Winterer, Mayor of Santa Monica, California.
Jill Tuckle, Mayor of Napa, California.
The United States Conference of Mayors has long been a proponent of the need to address climate change. Mayors have been on the front lines, taking action on climate protection efforts and in many cases launched local energy efficiency programs to help reduce our carbon footprint.
Okay, we are back in open session. Following agenda item number 10, I'd like to move to to maintain the confidentiality of the discussions held in the closed session regarding the status of complaints received or initiated by the Ethics Commission. Could I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Agenda item number 11, discussion and possible action on items for future meetings. Commissioner Rennie.
Yes. Back, I think, in about March of this year, I had referred a subject about possible legislation dealing with limitations on special or on non-candidate expenditure committees, and provided to the staff some materials that have been produced, both dealing with legislation in Florida and I believe in Massachusetts since that time. And I made inquiry of Pat about where that stood, and he pointed out to me that when we did our priority list, that particular independent expenditure committee legislation was not one of those that was at the top priority. So I would ask that we put on the October agenda that subject matter of possible legislation relating to independent expenditure committees and limitations on them. And I told Pat that I have 6 more months on this committee, on this commission, before my term runs out, and one of my goals is that we act on the draft legislation that has been presented to the staff, and that we move it as a priority item at the October meeting.
Okay, so this was the, and to put it on the agenda then, would that mean you'd like us to revisit the policy prioritization discussion that we had?
Well, my understanding is that October is when we do a reanalysis of the profile of the priority. And clearly, I would ask that it be placed as a priority item for action by the Commission within the next 6 months.
Leanne?
Yeah, we have, I think October is the right quarterly period where we said we would bring back the prioritization plan for a check-in. And what we can do is make sure that that material, information about that legislation is attached to that so it can inform your discussion about where you'd like to place it.
I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
And then the pad is flying solo until we can hire his replacement. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So hopefully we'll have someone on staff before the end of the year, and we can get to all these policy priorities.
Well, I think you'll find that there has been a lot of volunteer activity, proposed draft legislation with a draft ordinance, and with backup memoranda as to the potential constitutionality questions that might be raised by it, and that the staff can get volunteer work who would be happy to assist them in pushing this forward.
Okay. Any other items from commissioners on item 11?
Yes.
Commissioner Kopp.
I want to be sure that staff investigate the former Director of Public Health of the City and County of San Francisco over an allegation of directing city contracts to her wife. And I won't ask if such a request has been filed, but I hereby ask that such an investigation be commenced. And secondly, and this does not emanate from staff, I am informed and believe that one of the candidates for mayor, whose request for public financing was denied, has filed $1,300,000 claim with the controller of the city and county for intentional and negligent actions resulting in ineligibility for public financing. I can't think of anything in the last months more frivolous, and I want to go on the record to say that if after 90 days and that claim has been rejected by the controller of the city and county, a San Francisco or other county superior court suit is filed, I will make a motion to direct the commission's attorney not simply to demur to any such complaint, but also to move for sanctions under California rules of court and the California Code of Civil Procedure for the filing of a frivolous lawsuit.
Okay. We'll see how that unfolds. Public comment?
Good afternoon, commissioners and members of the public, Ethics Commission. I am here to...
What's your name?
My name is Louis Dillon, and I have been following, apart from last month when there was no meeting, but following the Ethics Commission's overall operating procedure and the subsequent claims and filings of people regarding campaign finance and gifts and so forth. And it seems like there is compliance with the city attorney's office to enable, abet, coerce, and to not really expose these campaign finance issues. This is evident because you don't really have to prove the case. You just have to prove that more likely than not, X and Y do not equal Z. And the fact that we are living in San Francisco, which comparatively speaking to the rest of the nation is the belly of the beast. I mean, this is where all the negative, atrocious allegations towards a Supreme Court nominee emanate from this city. And so, in context with that, we can further deduce that San Francisco is adept at putting the wrong people in service of the public, in service of monitoring the public, and in service of refereeing who gets to make decisions in San Francisco. The effects of this lack of refereeing, policing, investigating the finance that puts these people into positions of public trust. Clearly, a case can be made that the city attorney's office is aiding and abetting these people to get off. And they're enabling these people to get off due to the fact that they're suppressing evidence, not playing by the rules, not giving a fair shake to people who have complaints, and treating them like they're adversarial. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. Agenda item number 12, additional opportunity for public comment on matters appearing or not appearing on the agenda pursuant to Ethics Commission Bylaws, Article 7, Section 2.
Move we adjourn.
He wanted to make some. This gentleman wanted to make some public comment. Last call for public comment.
My name is Antonio. I had a question in regards to, are you guys going to be going through with any of the hiring for the committee that was mentioned earlier today? In regards to, I know there's some stuff going on with the Sunshine Ordinance. I know there were people needed to do research on some of the things regarding the, how do you say, there was a thing yesterday on the, how do you say, the oversight, overhauling of the, how do you say this, the proposal for SF open source voting. I don't know if there's any, will there be any people doing research on this that are going to be needed for here or as liaison, how do you say these, this people to go, act as go-betweens between this and the Mayor's Office on Technology.
I am not familiar with this initiative. I don't know if anyone on staff is familiar with the initiative. And Deputy Attorney Shen?
Yeah, if I may, if you're speaking about the open source voting system.
Yeah, that and liaisons to the Mayor's Office on Technology and the Sunshine Ordinance Committee and anything relating to the open source voting.
Yeah, so sorry to have to redirect you, but the open source voting effort is something that's within the jurisdiction of the Elections Commission.
Yeah.
This is the Ethics Commission, so it's
Yeah.
a separate body. And if you want to, I suppose, get more involved in Sunshine Ordinance matters, there is a separate body called the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force.
Yeah.
That also meets separately from this body.
I'm fine with everything. I didn't know if you guys were needing people for that. I know it was mentioned earlier that there was things needed between the Mayor's Office on Technology and whatnot, and various committees in the, how do you say this, in City Hall.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that part of your question. Sorry about that.
I know you guys had mentioned earlier that there was a, how do you say this? I think that should be fine. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kopp, was there a motion to adjourn?
Yes, so move.
Okay. All in favor? We are adjourned.
A record.